In this video, you're going to discover the 9 times that an inside cabin could be the best choice for a cruise. Hi, I'm Gary Bembridge, and this is another of my tips for travelers. Remember, subscribe to my channel and never miss a future video packed full of travel tips and advice. An inside cabin is a perfect choice if you're looking to cruise as inexpensively as possible, perhaps because you're in a budget, or actually you want to spend as little as possible on a cruise so you can go on as many cruises as possible. Inside cabins will be the least expensive or the cheapest of any cabin on board, and you can even find deals from anything from $75 up to $100 a day, which is going to include your cabin and all your food and entertainment. So it's a pretty inexpensive way of cruising. So if you're on a budget and you want to make sure that you can go on a cruise but spend as little as possible but still have access to all of the facilities, then an inside cabin is a great choice. The great thing about an inside cabin is you're likely to have access to everything on board that even people in the premium cabins are. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to that. So, for example, on Cunard, there are some restrictions based on the grade of cabin with your Princess Grill or Queen's Grill. Then some ships have, for example, Royal Caribbean has the Haven, which has some facilities that are only available to people in the Haven area. But generally speaking, you're likely to have a low fare and access to everything that everybody else has on board. Another good reason for booking an inside cabin is you want to free up as much money as possible to pay for the essential costs and the required costs of cruising. So if you go on a cruise, you normally have a lot of extra costs once you're on board: gratuities, Wi-Fi, excursions, and of course drinks. So that can mount up to quite a lot of money. So you want to free up as much money as possible for those things, particularly if you're going on a cruise which is going to places like Alaska, for example, where excursions can be pretty expensive. So you want to free up as much money as possible so you can go to the spa, you can gamble, you can go on excursions, and you can still have your overall cost of your cruise being pretty manageable. So that's a really good reason for choosing an inside cabin, as low as possible on the accommodation, the food, and free up as much money as possible to have a great time on other things that you want to do on your cruise. Inside cabins are also a great choice if you're traveling solo. Although there are increasingly solo cabins at all grades on board cruise ships, it's still relatively limited. So you'll find if you go on a cruise ship, you're often paying 50% surcharge up to 100% surcharge. So actually going in an inside cabin, if you're traveling by yourself, is a great option, because even if you're paying the full whack, you're paying a 50% or 100% surcharge, it's still much more manageable than going in a balcony or a suite, where the costs are enormous if you're traveling solo. Now, some cruise lines like Norwegian actually have created specific solo areas. So although they're inside cabins, they've created a little area where you can actually have all solo cabins, and they have a little lounge and other facilities. But if you're traveling solo, inside cabins are a great option to try and just make the cost of cruising so much more manageable. If you're looking to have better sleep, an inside cabin could be a great option. So inside cabins have no windows, so of course they're very dark. And if you've chosen a great location, it can be incredibly quiet and dark. So it's a great place if you like to have a really nice deep sleep. This is something that you may especially want to consider if you're traveling to places where there is almost no darkness. So if you're traveling to Norway or Iceland or even Alaska in the season, there's almost no darkness. So actually having a cabin with a balcony or a suite which has lots of windows, you might actually find that it's pretty light in your cabin. So an inside cabin is a great choice. Of course, if you're a party animal and you're going to be out and want to sleep during the day, an inside cabin is great because, again, it's going to be nice and dark and quiet. So if you're looking for a nice, dark, quiet space, an inside cabin could be a great choice. Now, very important, of course, when you're choosing your inside cabin, make sure that you're choosing a cabin that is in a quiet spot on the ship. So the key thing to do is look for an inside cabin that's surrounded by above, below, left-hand side, right-hand, and opposite by other cabins, so that you are in a nice quiet spot of the ship and you can get that sleep that you're looking for. Inside cabins are also a great choice if you're on a big resort ship and you actually know that you're not going to want to spend time in your cabin because you're going to be out enjoying a resort. So if you go on one of those big mega ships where there is so much to do, there's all sorts of attractions and rides and water parks and things to do. So actually you're not going to want to spend time in your cabin because you're going to want to be out enjoying a resort ship. Now, of course, you might decide if you're on a smaller ship which doesn't have that, you actually might be spending more time in your cabin, so you might want a balcony. But if you're on a big resort ship and you know you're going to be out all of the time in the day, in the evening, enjoying all the various attractions and nightclubs, the facilities, then an inside cabin could be a really good choice because you just are going to spend virtually no time there. Getting ready and sleeping is the only time you're going to spend there, take a look at an inside cabin. Linked to that, another good reason for taking an inside cabin is if you're on a very port intensive trip. So every day you're going to be in a port, and actually you're on one of those cruises where you arrive into the port very early and you stay very late. So increasingly cruise lines are trying to stay longer and longer in ports. So if you're basically on a 7-day cruise or even longer, and every single day you're in a port, you're getting there basically at breakfast time or even before breakfast and leaving late in the evening, an inside cabin could be a great choice, because actually you're not going to want to go on a balcony or have a window to actually look at the scenery, because pretty much when you're awake, you're going to be in port. So very port intensive trips could be a great reason for having an inside cabin, especially if you're not that bothered about watching coming into port or leaving port, or if you are, you're happy to go up on deck and take a look at sail in and sail out from there. Now, if you're not in a rush to board the ship or get off the ship, an inside cabin is also a great choice. Inside cabins tend to be some of the last that will board a ship and some of the last that get off a ship on disembarkation day. So if you're not in a big rush, you're not bothered about getting on the ship early or getting off the ship late, an inside cabin is a great choice. Now, of course, if you cruise a lot on one particular cruise line, and even if that's an inside cabin, you will build up loyalty. And as you work up loyalty, you start to get things like priority embarkation and disembarkation. So actually, even sailing within an inside cabin, as you build up loyalty, which is based on number of nights, not on what cabin you're in, you start to get all of those perks as well. So don't let that put you off an inside cabin if you know that you're going to be loyal to one cruise line. I would also say an inside cabin is good if you travel light. So in obviously a suite or balcony cabins, which tend to be bigger, there's often much more storage space. But if you are a relatively light cruiser, particularly if you're going on a nice warm cruise and you're not on a cruise line which has big strict dress codes, and you're actually able therefore to travel pretty light, an inside cabin is great if you don't need lots of storage, because you're a light traveler and you don't need loads of places to put all your fancy clothes. So an inside cabin is great for people who like to travel nice and light. So if you travel light, there's another great advantage, because it's one way of getting around that getting off a ship late. Many cruise lines, if you're able to carry your own baggage, will allow you to self-disembark, and they tend to be very early in terms of disembarking the ship. So if you can carry all of your luggage off a ship, you can get off really, really early. So that's one way of getting around it. So if you're a light traveler, an inside cabin is a great option. Another great choice for inside cabins is because, although they're not exclusively, but many of them are lower down on the ship. So if you are particularly worried about motion sickness and seasickness, an inside cabin could be a great choice, because they do tend to be much lower down in the ship, or you can certainly get them much lower down in the ship, because of course they don't need to have windows, they don't need to have balconies. So get an inside cabin low down and midships, and that's great for people who are worried about seasickness. Now, saying that, all inside cabins are not necessarily low down. You can get inside cabins which are much higher up on a ship, but if you're worried about it, it's one of the lowest cabins you can get on a ship is going to be an inside cabin, so it's a great choice. So as you can see, there's lots of reasons for choosing an inside cabin. Hopefully you found that helpful. If you have, I'd love it if you watch many more of my Tips for Travelers videos, and you'll get many more travel tips, inspiration, and advice.